having me. I'm just here to give a short presentation. Jane had attended a meeting of the Instructional Quality Commission that's currently reviewing the state framework on history, social science instruction, and wanted us to come and sort of talk about that process with all of you. So I thought I would give you an overview just in terms of what does it mean to teach history in California classrooms, knowing that you all are here looking to find sort of supplemental information to support the work you do either as a history instructor or as an English instructor, as a second language instructor. But thinking about from the California state position, how are they thinking about how history is taught in California classrooms? And so the way I wanted to do that was, one, to tell you a bit about our project, and then outline these three components. And if you're public school teachers, you're probably fairly familiar just with this breakdown, but the standards, which in history are content standards, then textbooks, which are a basic explanation of the standards, and then the framework and the process of how the framework gets written. So we're based in the history department at Berkeley, and we're one of the California subject matter projects. So many people have heard of the Bay Area Writing Project. There's the Science Project. The idea is that we are funded partially through the state, and are the state's commitment to content-specific professional development for California teachers. And so we receive funding to provide Saturday and summer programming to teachers around how to improve history instruction. And within that, we're based at, all of the sites are either at UCs or CSUs. And so there's this idea of a K-16 continuum. And so what are the resources on the university campus that can be leveraged to support the work that you all are doing in K-12 classrooms? And so here, just noting that in terms of our programming, it's research-based, where we have the time and the space on the university to use the research to influence what we do, but we also then have scholars present to teachers, similar to the work that you're doing today, supplementing the support that teachers get in their classrooms. So then, the reason a lot of you are here, and probably, particularly if you're a history teacher, is there isn't much about Korea in the California state standards. And so this is just an overview of what the state expects teachers in history classrooms broadly to focus on during the year of instruction. And so Korea, when it appears in the 10th and 11th grade curriculum around the Korean War. Writing these standards is a collaborative and consensus-driven process. So there are lots of interests that are involved in creating the standards. And I think the primary notion, particularly in thinking about, where does Korean history fall in this scope and sequence, is that history instruction in the United States and history instruction in other countries around the world, there's a base of it that's about nation building. And so it's about telling the story of the nation that the students are in and their relationship to the rest of the world. That isn't to say that in 6th grade there's the study of ancient history, but it can't cover everything, and what does the state choose as most important may be ideas about which cultures have most influenced our current culture. Not exclusively, but you have to think about that's the lens where a lot of these decisions are being made. So the plug to the computer. there's days like this, if you want to supplement either because of your interest, because of your student population, there isn't going to be a lot that overlaps with what the state is thinking about. So with regard to history instruction, you have the content standards, which have historically driven, traditionally driven history instruction in California. And then in the last few years, there's the advent of the Common Core. Most of the discussion around the Common Core has been around English language arts and math. There is an appendix or a portion of it, however, that deals with literacy in history, social studies, as well as science and technical subjects. And so just to give you a sense of, history teachers are driven by the constraints to a certain level of the content standards and are more recently being asked to really think about what is the discipline-specific literacy in history classrooms. What does it mean to read and write in history, to build arguments, to use evidence, these sorts of skills. And so you have to come on a Saturday because there isn't information in a textbook about Korean history, or in a United States textbook about Korean history. Thank you. That being said, so textbooks are adopted to aid in instruction of the content standards. Our current political moment means that in California classrooms there's local control funding formula and local control accountability plans. And I raise this for two reasons. One is that it means there's more local control in terms of what can and will be taught in California classrooms. So what that means is that local communities can now choose what textbooks are used in their community's classrooms. So this is a point of intervention. If there's a part of history that you want included, and I'm sure it applies to other curricular areas, to organize parents, to organize teachers, to campaign for a certain textbook. Along these lines is just more local control in terms of deciding what to speak, or what to teach. And so there's a point of entry that you should be aware of there. So then Jane went to this meeting where they were talking about the California History and Social Science Framework. The framework, so you have the content standards, then you have the textbooks, which form sort of the basis of what people are doing in their history classrooms, teachers are doing in their history classrooms. With the Common Core, teachers are being asked to supplement the textbook with additional text, secondary and primary text, and so that's also an opportunity. And then the framework is this document that's really a rationale for why the standards were selected and how history should be taught. So it's sort of this meta cognitive document referring to the thinking skills and the conceptualization behind the history standards. They are not the content, the standards are the content. And so that's the point of entry with regard to changing the content that's mandated to be taught in California classrooms. The framework is the conceptualization. And so I just wanted to share this, and you have a teeny tiny copy in front of you, which also has a teeny tiny link to a website. But so this is the timeline of the framework revision. And so I mentioned our current framework is in the process of being reviewed. So in 2005, California adopted its most recent framework. And then in 2008, efforts were made to revise that framework. However, because of the budget crisis, the framework was revised, it went to public review, and during that public review process, the legislature halted the review, so because of the budget crisis, and there wasn't enough funding to continue. And so more recently, in 2012, Governor Brown allowed for the completion of the framework. And so what that means is there was a revision of the framework that was completed in 2008. It was halted in 2009 during the review process. And so now we're reopening the review process with the expectation that the new framework will be adopted, I believe, for the next school year. And so just the final piece, just thinking about you as members of the public and where are the opportunities to insert your voice. The current framework is available online, and there's open review through November 25th. Going back to here, following the open review process in December and February, there will be revisions based on this current review process, and so then in February there will be a new 60-day review process. And so those are the moments when the public can enter the conversation about what they think should or should not be included. So I hope that this is helpful just in terms of giving you a sense of what is the history that's taught in California classrooms, why are those choices made, and are there opportunities for you as members of the public to put pressure on either your local districts or the state with regard to what you think should be included either in the standards, probably most likely in the standards, or the framework. So that's my presentation. Are there any questions? I know you have lots of other things going on today. Mark.
I came to California and testified in front of one of these committees in Sacramento about increasing the amount of coverage for Korea. And it was reported to me that the standards had 4, if I remember right, items about Korea before, but after this review back in 2008, before it got stopped, they increased the number of mentions of Korea to 17. But then the governor stopped it, and now you're talking about it being reopened again. Is it open as it is with the 17 things on it?
That's an excellent question. So, yes, so it was reopened where it was with a few minor additions with regard to any legislative requirements that happened in the intervening years. But basically, it's the same document from that time period. Yeah. Anything else? Well, thank you for having me. If you're interested in history instruction, definitely check out our website. I was lucky enough to have lunch with Evelyn, who I met this summer, who came to one of our workshops on using technology in the classroom, and we're working with San Jose Unified history teachers right now. So, come to our program. I have 2 flyers that I'll just leave about upcoming programming this fall if you'd like to come. So, thank you.